I want you to take these and give them a shuffle. The spectator shuffles the cards. Pick any two playing cards without looking from your shuffled deck. Now I noticed that you picked out two cards from a deck you didn't examine. Let's just take a look at the cards to make sure that they are just all regular. Now we're going to mix these up because we've seen the order of them. Just square them up for me. And finally we'll give them a shuffle. We come to the two cards that you chose. We're going to use these to generate virtual card. Mix up those two cards. Place one here and one here. Do you want to swap those over? The card in the middle is incomplete, but it will have the answer in a moment. You see, I'm going to get you to fill in this with some information. You see, the card you placed here is going to represent the value. The card over here will represent the suit. If you'd like to take the pen and just fill in the information. So over here, you've got a value of a 4. Not a very high card, but it is a 4. You have a club. Now we want a total, so we'll use the two values that you picked, a 4 and a 9. That gives us 13. Now that generates a randomized card and a position. You couldn't have known that in advance, and I couldn't have known that. You ended up on the 4 of clubs at a position of 13. Deal face up 12 cards and stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Deal the next card here, face down. You could have had any of these cards from the pack. However, you arrived here. Your virtual card was the 4 of clubs. You're not going to believe this, but the card in reality really is the 4 of clubs at position 13. Here is the tutorial and some ideas on how you can best perform this routine. Now, there's many tricks that use a similar principle of getting someone to pick a couple of cards that determine the final card you're going to use. That way it seems totally randomized. Using a card to write this down so people don't forget is also not new. Many tricks use this principle as well. This is how I've performed this particular version that I came up with many years ago. Now, there's a couple of ways of performing this, so let's go through the way that I presented in the routine. First of all, you need to get a card or piece of paper for people to write on. And before you start, write on it the value, the word value, and an arrow pointing in one direction. Below that, put suit and point the other direction, and at the bottom, the total. Sometimes I put the word position. Now, I also put a couple of underlines here just to encourage people where to write. That is the card. By the way, I tend to use a business card because you can then give that away at the end as a souvenir, and they've got all your details should they want to book you for work. So that's the first part of the trick. Now the deck. The way that I performed it in the routine, this is a trick deck. It's one that can be read from the back. So I can see what all these cards are just by reading the markings on the back. Now I will show you a method without using a marked deck, but this one I just find enhances the whole experience. So with the marked cards, I can see exactly what they choose as soon as they remove them from the spread. So let's just go through how I performed this. So it is a marked deck. That's all you got to know. The cards apart from that are regular. Ensure that the spectator shuffles the cards at the start to put them in any order. They don't need any setup whatsoever. Once they've done that, you're going to spread the cards across the table. Now, I'm spreading them in this particular way for the next move. They pull out any two cards and they can be from anywhere. Now, the first thing I'm doing is looking at the markings. I can see that this is a 5 of spades and this one is a 6 of clubs. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I now know what the cards are, and that's quite important for the next part, because as soon as they start to slide those out, you've got plenty of time to note those cards. Now, because I know it's a 5 of spades, 6 of clubs here, in my head I'm thinking of putting those together to say the 5 of clubs. That's all you're going to do. In your head, you're going to put those two cards together to make up the forced card, basically. So the 5 of clubs is what I'm looking for. So in this spread, once you do that, just put these to one side, remembering which is which. I know that's a 5 of spades, that's a 6 of clubs. Together, they make up the card value of the 5 of clubs. You could do it the other way round. It could be the 6 of spades. That's up to you, but 5 of clubs is easy for me to remember. I also know that the value of those two added together is 11. A 6 and a 5 is 11. I've got every bit of information I need. Remember, you're doing this as soon as they remove the cards, they start to slide them out. You know what the cards are. As you move them to one side, you've already decided what the value is and which card is going to be forced. Next move is quite a clever move, because I've got to find the 5 of clubs in here. As I spread these cards over, I start to spread the cards out and I'm looking for the card that I've just put together in my head, which is the 5 of clubs. That's just here. I can see that. Now, all you do is you start to grab cards, you start to throw them like this over here, and you just say, we can wash these on the table. Now, what you're going to do is break the cards here, doing all of this, and I can leave these at the bottom like that. Pull cards out, and it looks as though you're giving them a thorough mixing on the table. Real convinced of this one. So the bottom line is the card at the bottom is the 5 of clubs, which is the one that I want. Now let me just show you this again if the cards were in a different position. So they're spread. Let's say it was right down here somewhere. As I turn the cards over, and I'm deliberately doing a flip over of the spread because it makes it easy for me to grab these cards. Now I've spotted that the 5 is at this end. So what I would do is I would grab some cards here so that the 5 is left here, throw these over in a casual manner. Then when I grab another bunch, I throw these as a block, making sure that this is the bottom card. Now I can just do whatever I want with these, mix them up, pull them out from the middle, shuffle them like this, and it really does look convincing. The bottom line is you've got to get this in a known position. In my case, on top of the pack. When you turn these cards over, this is the card we're going to force onto them. We square the cards up. Now at this point, I already know that it's got to be in the 11th position. So I'm going to deal off 10 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I do a step. Now I am exaggerating that. Okay, it doesn't need to be that big. And then a sloppy shuffle on top, like this. When you come up and break the cards, you're going to lift this with your thumb and do a break like that. We're all set. That card is in the 11th position. Again, I'll show you some alternative ways of doing this. That's all you've got to remember. And by the way, if we do that again, so remember the 5 is on top, you can shuffle the cards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 cards, and then you can just put these at the back. You don't have to do a cut if you don't want to. It's the 11th card down. And when you're doing this, so for example, when I do this, you're not going to be counting, so try and talk as you're doing this. So I might say, I'm going to do a casual shuffle like this. Now I know I've just dealt 5 cards on here, and then I can then just do another 5 like this, and then whatever I want to do next. I'm sure you'll come up with other ways of getting this in the right place, but that's all you're doing. You're stacking the cards. Now, what I like about this effect is the audience doesn't know what's going to happen. So they're not watching for anything. They're not going to think, oh, is he counting cards? Has he not shuffled that pack properly? There's no reason for them to doubt you because they've chosen 2 cards. All the heat is over here. They think that's to do with the trick. They just think you're mixing up the cards before you put them down. We then turn to these here. Remember this card that you put down. It's face down at the moment. Now this plays an important part. Remember the 2 cards. If they separate these, we've got the 6 of clubs and the 5 of spades here. Let's just get a bit closer onto the action that's going on here now, because I want to explain this because it's such a strong part of the trick. The spectator, once they've put their cards, one to their left, one to their right, they get a choice of swapping them, and it really is a free choice. Of course, being a reader back, I can see which card is which. I know this is the 5 of spades, this is the 6 of clubs. If they leave it like that, the card is turned over a certain way. You're either going to turn this card left to right or top to bottom, like that. Side to side or top to bottom. That's the key to this working. So I know this way. I know that if I turn this over, the value is always on this side, the suit is that side. Because I know this is a 5, that is the value I want, I will give them the pen before I turn it over and say to them, I want you to write down the details of this, and I turn the card side on, so left to right. They then turn over their cards and they then write in the relevant information. But what if they swap the cards over? If they swap the cards over, I do this. I say, right, are you happy with those cards in that order? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to write these. I turn this over so it's facing me. Look at the arrows. They're pointing in the opposite directions. The value. Let's take the value. That's a 5. The suit is the club. And then we add these up. And what I do is I just take these and put them together, add up the value and write it down here. We're all done. And I like to turn these over as I place that for everyone to see. It's a great part of the effect because at this point spectators have chosen 2 random cards from a pack they shuffled. They even had a choice of putting them left or right. They haven't even seen it. In fact, nobody in the room, including the magician, hasn't seen the cards yet. So when they fill in this, or I fill in this, this is totally randomized as far as they're concerned. The finish is all done. It's all performance. You don't touch the cards. You say, I want you to grab those cards that you cut, and then they deal down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it turns out to be their card. Everything's clean. You can give them this to keep as a souvenir. It's got all your details on, and I think that is a great ending to a fantastic effect. Now, before we get on to a couple of ideas of performing this with a regular deck, there's 2 things you need to be aware of when they choose 2 cards. And it is going to involve you having to do a little bit of extra work. But this is very rare. You've got 52 cards for them to choose from. So this doesn't happen that often, but it may. So I do want to cover this. When you spread the cards and ask them to take 2 cards, 2 things. First of all, they must be different suits. If they're both diamonds or both hearts, you need them to pick another 2 cards. The other thing you need to look out for is if both cards are the same value. Okay, so if we've got the same value, here I've got the 3 of diamonds and the 3 of clubs, that won't work either. This very rarely happens. Okay, again, think of an out that you would do. So once again, just to recap, the trick will not work and will require you to do a little bit more of Magician's Choice if both cards they slide out are of the same suit or of the same value. That's all you've got to remember. So with that done and covered, let's move on. How would you do this with a regular deck of cards that aren't marked? I do like the marked cards, but it can be performed just by a regular deck. When they spread the cards and they remove them, you can just turn them straight up if you want. As long as you know what they are, you can know all of this information for later on. Okay, and that's it. So you could put those there and even turn them over and say we'll come back to those with the secret. Alternatively, as these are removed and you go to move them across, just a little tilt, you don't have to pick them up. You can just say these 2 cards will come back to, and all I've done was glimpse the 2 cards. That's all you do. It's up to you how you do this, reveal them straight away or just glimpse the cards and put them down. Remember, this is if you're using a non-marked deck.